Working with sustainability for a lot of years, I think one of the biggest challenges and the key is to visualize sustainability. And I think one of the good examples of visualizing it are the global goals. And we are very fortunate today to be with the designer of the global goals, Jakob Trollbäck. So very nice to meet you here in Stockholm at your newly opened office.
Yeah.
So shortly, if you explain shortly why and how it come to design the global goals, what is the story?
Well, when the UN was getting close to agree on the 17 goals, they understood that communication would be a very important part. And they had put together a communication group of about 25 people. And at the same time, I met Richard Curtis, the film director, who told me about the goals, and he said, but you know, these goals are going to fail if we cannot make them popular. So can you help us making them popular? And so that was the central part of making them something that people would appreciate and like and work for and be excited about. So we worked on it, and the first thing we realized was that they were just too complicated. They had too long names, they had well, they didn't have names really, they just had sentences describing what it was.
Very UN-ish, as we say it,
And so we started, well, I started to try to just understand them. And that's a pretty big problem if you're going to launch 17 goals. And as a somewhat educated person, don't quite understand what they are.
So you began with reading through and trying to understand yourself first.
And then I said, okay, this first one is about poverty, the second one is about hunger, the third one, this is about health, and fourth one is about education. And then and after a while it got a little bit complicated. What is this about? And so some of them were hard to understand, but I just felt that in order to make a communication system, I had to understand them. So I just started to write headlines for them, and I didn't think at that time that the UN would actually accept my names for it. But
so it wasn't designed from the beginning?
No. And I think the big moment was I think it was in February of 2015, which was then about 5 months before they were released. No, 7 months before they were released. I came in and showed them some kind of a grid with symbols and names. And at that point, it was like the mood changed in the room, because they were also concerned about communicating this. And all of a sudden I think they were just thinking, oh, this might work. Because they all were worried that 17 goals was too many. They were like, people can't remember 17 goals. They can remember maybe 10. And because the millennial development goals have been 8.
8, yes.
And
that's only half of what it is now.
So,
and I think this excitement you're saying, that is really happening, because finally we have, during those last 46 years of international agreements and international environmental meetings and conferences, finally we have a kind of compass that people can understand. It's very, very easy to understand it. So what in those global goals, because reaching out to 7 billion people, what you are basically on the way of doing and succeeding, what has been the biggest challenge for that?
Well, I think that it's when you're talking, there are different, in societies, there are different levels of where people position themselves, and politicians and business leaders, they look at themselves as very serious people who are dealing with serious things, and they are. But that's there's something that comes with that this should be sort of black and white or gray or maybe a little blue. It's something that's and it's not made to, like when you talk to certain people, it's like as if colors were making something not serious. It's like you can't be serious with colors. I mean, you can't be serious with pink. That's like, and we were just saying that no, these goals has to be something that people love, that people get excited about. So it was a lot about making them something that didn't seem boring. And you see now that they have them in schools because they're colorful and they have nice little icons that people and kids are sitting and drawing, you know, their own version of the icons. And I think that it's fundamental that it comes from the bottom, that it's a base.
If it doesn't spread, it is no sense of making a goal, you know.
And people have to understand, and I think that it's in some old world that was like, okay, here are the rulers and here are the people who just like work and do whatever. But we have to all change now. We're all in the same boat, and that means that everyone has to understand. So,
and the language of color is really reaching out to that, I think, because for the first time we have a colorful sustainability.
Yeah.
And the language of this is through the colors, and it makes people happy. I mean, we have been in India, in Zambia, in Japan, and people are talking about this because just what you said, the colors, I think, of one main.
And they're all colors that exist in nature, right?
Yeah.
They're a part of us.
Yeah.
And I would say another thing also is that you have to believe, if you start a journey, you have to believe that you're going to get there, because otherwise there's no point. No one would get up in the morning and say, I'm going to try to go to work.
Exactly.
You say, okay, I'm going to set out to go to work, and you know you're going to get there. So for us it was important that the language of them was also future positive, that they were, so we didn't say end poverty, which sounds like a big job. We said no poverty. This is where, because in 2030, we should be there.
Yeah, but this is something you have really succeeded with the backcasting of this, I think. You have connected to the backcasting, and that is a very, very Swedish way, I think, of doing sustainability. You put yourself into the future and then you look how you can get there. And you have succeeded with that, so congratulations to that as well. That's fantastic.
We also like to, we've done some things when the Swedish government did their presentation at UN for the high-level political meeting. We did a short film that talked about how it was. We interviewed old people, and they told us a story of when they were kids, when they had the jobs were dirty, there was poverty, and people were scrambling to get food, because Sweden was a pretty poor society.
Yeah.
And then we said, look how far we've come, because this doesn't exist now.
Yeah.
And then as a second part, we interviewed young people, and they were talking about as if they were in 2030.
Wow.
They were saying, wow, You know, can you believe that that boys and girls didn't get the same money for the same work?
Yeah.
How crazy were they back then? So it's interesting to be part of this journey.
And to celebrate it, as you say, to recognize that we have actually come quite far as humans as well, and we could reach it by 2030 if we go together with that one. And talking about celebrating, Sweden is a leading nation towards sustainability in many ways. What do you think people should learn from Sweden to be able to get encouraged towards the goals? Well, what do you think is?
I guess it's about consensus in a way, that you can't build a strong society if you can't agree on things. And I think that's why there's also interesting that there are similarities in Swedish and Japanese culture, that I think is you're thinking, you're thoughtful, and
you think about your neighbor.
Yeah.
In that sense, it's kind of a humble storm, as I describe it. Yeah.
I think it's important that we think about our place on this planet, and we think about our children who we love, and we think about that this is a wonderful place to be at, but we have to take care of it, and we can't just, not care about the future, because our children are the future, and this planet is too good for us to not care about.